So the other day after work, I was sitting in my replacement bus because my train line was shut down for its routine daily maintenance works. As it turns out, there was heaps of roadworks, so the replacement bus just gave up and told us to get Ubers. So now I'm sitting in my Uber thinking maybe I should just buy a car. People say buying a car is one of those major life milestones, kind of like buying a house or getting married and having kids. So far I've achieved none of those things, so I guess I should start somewhere. Anyways, I got home 3 hours later and decided to have a quick look at some car reviews on YouTube. I used to think that the most saturated market on YouTube was videos about how to start a successful YouTube channel. But oh boy was I wrong. Turns out that every person and their kids and their dogs are reviewing cars. So I started watching, reading, listening, and subscribing to my favorite YouTube channels. And this is what I found. I used to think that cars were just this. But now I've learned that there are about 12 main body types, each with on average 7 subcategories and about 20 different engine variations. That's about 11,760 total possible combinations. That's a lot to go through, but I think I can simplify it down by just focusing on the key ones. So firstly, you have K cars, which are super tiny cars popular in Asian countries, but they hardly ever get sold in the West because if you drive this, people will call you a pussy. They don't really vary much in size because they are all just small. The engines are tiny and you probably won't fit in the car, and if you do, you'll likely push it over the weight limit so you probably won't make it up a hill. Also, if you crash, you'll probably die, but they are super efficient and easy to park. Then you have hatchbacks. These are the undisputed kings of balancing size, efficiency, practicality, affordability, and driving dynamics. You can get luxurious ones, off-road looking ones, and even sporty ones called hot hatches. They have a lot to offer. But despite all this, most people only buy hatchbacks as the first car for their kids when they turn 18. Then after a few years, they get sold to poorer families so their children can drive it as their first cars. The consensus seems to be that if you drive a hatchback as a fully grown adult, you are generally regarded as someone who still hasn't quite made it in life. Next up, we have sedans. This is what most of us millennials grew up thinking of when we think about what a car looks like. Now in terms of relevance, they are kind of at the same level as a floppy disk. The only people who own these are old people who haven't upgraded their car in the past 20 years, Tesla Model 3 owners, and taxi drivers. These types of cars are basically on the verge of being wiped out by the next category, SUVs. Pretty much 80% of all the cars you see on the roads nowadays are some form of grey, silver, or black SUV. This subcategory is super versatile. Of the 11,760 combinations I mentioned earlier, I would say about 90% of these are within this category alone. To keep it simple, it basically goes like this. Small SUVs are hatchbacks that sit a bit higher, medium SUVs are just sedans that sit a bit higher, and large SUVs are just four-wheel drives that sit a bit lower. And every other SUV is just another size that falls within that range. From everything I've read, it seems that the target market for SUVs are people who are perfectly fine with moderate to high fuel consumption so they can drive to work alone and use all the boot space for a single backpack. Then after a long day of sitting behind a computer, they pick up the kids from school and do some light off-roading and head home. On weekends, the SUV makes the important trip to brunch, and once a year it goes on a road trip where all 5 seats are finally used, only to discover that there's now not enough room for everyone's luggage. And honestly, that pretty much sums them up. The next major category I have are four-wheel drives. These expensive fuel-guzzling beasts that are possibly borderline trucks and not cars are really good when you need to drop your kids off at the local soccer game and there just happens to be boulders or a river in your way. They usually have heaps of space, which is great for the once-a-year road trip. For the rest of the year though, about 20% of that space is used for groceries, while the remaining 80% exists purely to let everyone else know how much of a man you really are. As for safety, they are generally top of the line, mainly because they make sure the other family loses first. The last major category I've found are sports cars. These cars are really for two groups of people. Those who have too much money and don't know what else to do with it, and those who have very little money but can't afford therapy, so they buy something impractical and loud to make themselves feel good. Overall, this is an overwhelming amount of information, and I'm not convinced I've actually narrowed anything down. I had numerous panic attacks throughout this process because I had no idea what I was doing. I took some beta blockers though, calmed down, and continued researching because unbelievably we're still not done. Within each of those body type categories, the cars also come with different engine types. Now this got pretty technical. Every review I saw always had a section where they got really into the engine power, brake pressure, torque, and all these big terms, acting like their viewer base actually knows what any of this means, apart from bigger numbers meaning stronger, louder, and faster. In short, there are inline 4-cylinder engines, which make up most cars. These are pretty efficient and just get the job done. Then you have all the Vs. V6, V8, V10, V12, and essentially the higher the V, the more powerful, loud, expensive, and hungry your car gets. Then, if you're willing to pay more, you can usually get a turbocharged option, which just means if you have a smaller engine, it'll make it go fast. There are also superchargers, but no one seems to offer that option anymore. Lastly, the latest entry to the group is electric cars. Effectively, these are just more expensive versions of the combustion engine equivalent, but if you are rich enough to get one, it'll eventually be cheaper after about a decade because you save money on petrol, just in time for the battery to die so you can buy a new car. They also have a lot of cool tech and could probably power your house if governments could be bothered sorting that out. Oh, and we also have hybrid cars. They really only exist so that the usual car manufacturers can slow down making EVs and still profit on what they are good at making, while governments try and work out what to do with the influx of practical, affordable Chinese EVs flooding the market. There's also hydrogen cars, which seem to pop up as something that will save the planet every 5 years or so, then they tend to vanish again from the news cycle. After all that research, I don't think I narrowed anything down. If anything, I have less clarity than when I started. On top of that, there are so many car brands that it genuinely made me question whether competition is actually good for consumers, because at a certain point, this just feels like too much choice. At this stage, I started spiraling again, and briefly considered whether we should just go full communism. But I thought, hey, maybe the best thing for me to do would be to go to a car dealer and let the experts talk me through it, so I headed out to the local car dealer. These guys just confuse me more. As it turns out, every manufacturer offers a ridiculous number of variants, where you're essentially picking between a combination of safety features, paint colors, sound systems, and seat warmers, or, if you prefer, a mostly empty shell with barely an engine that technically qualifies as a car. Anyways, I'm not very confrontational, so these guys ended up convincing me to go for a middle-of-the-range option, which to me sounded like what the lowest option should have just included as standard, but I guess that kind of thinking is probably why I'm not a multimillionaire. Turns out that the last thing I forgot to research was cost. I thought your average car would be about 20 grand. Well, now it seems that the cheapest option is going to be around 50 grand. I don't have that kind of money. This actually made the dealers quite happy, as they started to sell me on all their financing options. It turns out I failed all their prerequisites here as well. After this, they basically kicked me out. I decided to head to a second-hand car dealer because I thought surely I can get at least 50% off the brand new price. Well, as it turns out, they are more like 10% cheaper. I asked the dealer if they were ripping me off, but then I got lectured on the cost of living, interest rates, COVID, increased demand for second-hand cars, and global supply chain issues. At that moment, my public transport app just pinged me, saying that there's rail maintenance works on my line tomorrow morning, so I'll have to grab the replacement bus again and allow for multiple hours of delay. I guess I should probably head home and get some sleep. So now I'm sitting in my Uber heading home, thinking maybe public transport really isn't so bad. Anyways, remember boys and girls that most cars will get you from A to B. Don't make stupid decisions with car loans, and subscribe. I promise it's good for you. Thanks for watching, friends.